Ang ating online program ay magsisimula sa loob ng ilang minuto.
Rizal Park, Luneta. Isa itong mohon, isang bantayog, isang landmark. Mga kaibigan, mayaman man o mahirap, taga-probinsya man o taga-Maynila, Pilipino o dayuhan, dito pumupunta upang mamasyal, magsaya, magpalakas, magdiwang. Ito po ang pinaka-importanteng parke sa kasaysayan ng bansa. At sa maraming pagkakataon, Dito tayo nagkaroon ng kabayanihan, trahedya, pagkilos, pagdiriwang, at pagsasaya bilang isang bansa. Ang Maynila ang kabisera ng Pilipinas. Pero ang Rizal Park Luneta ang puso ng Republika. Makasaysayang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si 𝘍𝐲𝐢, isang public historian. Samahan niyo po ako sa Rizal Park Luneta walking tour. Apat na siglo at kalahati na po ang nakalilipas nang dumating ang mga Espanyol dito sa kaharian ng Maynila. Pinaalis sina Raja Sulaiman sa kanilang kaharian at dinala po sila dito sa lugar na ito. At ito pong lugar na ito ay mula noon tinawag na kanilang Bagong Bayan. Nakilala ito bilang Bagong Bayan. Mga kaibigan, ito pong lugar na Bagong Bayan ay paalala ng ating pighati sa ilalim ng kolonyalismo. Ito pong lugar na ito ay ginawang parke, kinlir, upang maprotektahan ang kanilang lungsod, ang Intramuros, na pinadiran nila para madaling makita kung may mga lumulusog na mga Pilipino. Ang parking ito, mga kaibigan, mula noon ay naging pasyalan o dito ginagawa yung mga tinatawag na paseo ng mga mayayaman, kung saan sila po ay umiikot dito sa kanilang karwahe. Pero, hindi lamang po pagpapaseyo o pamamasyal ang kanilang libangan dito. Ginawa din po libangan, paminsan-minsan, ang pagtunghay ng mga pagbitay, executions. Dito po sa lugar na ito, binaril, ginarote o binitay ang iba't ibang mga nagkasala sa Espanya. Isa po sa mga naging pagbitay na naganap dito sa Bagong Bayan, Luneta, ay ang nangyari sa mga paring Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, at Jacinto Zamora. Sila po ay mga inosenteng lumaban lamang para sa pagkakapantay-pantay ng kapayapaan dito sa Pilipinas. Sila po ay sinakdal sa isang rebelyong wala silang kinalaman. Ang naganap po na marahas na pagbitay sa tatlong inosenteng pare ay gumimbal sa maraming Pilipino. At ang 1872, ang mga kaganapan nito ang magiging inspirasyon ng maraming Pilipino upang humingi ng pagbabago at paglaon, revolusyon laban sa kolonyalismo. Sa tatlong paring ito, inalay ni Jose Rizal ang kanyang ikalawang nobelang El Filibusterismo. Mga kaibigan, ang mga kaganapan sa lugar na ito ang sumibol sa kamalayang makabayan at pagbubuo ng nasyon ng ating mga bayani.
Ang proyektong ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism. Bago natin simulan ng ating programa, mayroon lamang kaming kaunting paalala para sa mga manunood. Una, ang ating online program ay mapapanood ng live sa ating Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Magiging available ito on demand pagkatapos ng ating live discussion. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ang webinar na ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media. Ikalawa, Nais naming marinig ang inyong mga komento at makita ang inyong mga reaksyon sa live discussion. Para sa Zoom participants, kung kayo ay may mga tanong para sa ating speaker, maaari ninyo itong iparating sa amin sa pamamagitan ng Q&A button na matatagpuan sa ibabang bahagi ng inyong screen. Para naman sa ating mga viewers sa Facebook, maaari ninyong i-comment ang inyong mga katanungan sa live video na ito. Sisikapin naming masagot ang lahat ng inyong katanungan sa nakatakdang oras. Panghuli, ang mga makakakompleto lamang sa pagsagot ng ating online survey form ang makakatanggap ng copy ng kanilang digital certificate. Kaya abangan po ninyo sa chat box at comment section ang online survey link na aming ipopost. Paki-review po ang inyong entry details, lalo na ang inyong pangalan, bago i-click ang submit button. Dahil ito po ang aming ilalagay sa inyong digital certificate. Iyon lamang po ang ilang mga paalala.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Welcome sa ating 40th webisode ng Park Conversations na pinamagatang Victims of an Evil I Try to Fight. The execution of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, or GomBurZa, and their legacy of identity and resistance. Ako si Lauengco, ang inyong host para sa ating Park Conversations ngayong umaga. Ang special webisode na ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism bilang bahagi ng pagdiriwang sa ika-150 taon ng kabayanihan ng GomBurZa. Today, we remember the 3 secular priests, collectively known as GomBurZa, who were publicly executed at the Bagong Bayan. This historical event ignited the fight against colonialism and awakened the Filipino consciousness and nationalism. To mark this historical milestone, we are holding a special Park Conversations webisode entitled Victims of an Evil I Try to Fight, the execution of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, and their legacy of identity and resistance. With this, it is my honor to welcome and introduce our speaker for today's webisode. Our guest speaker is Professor Jose Victor Z. Torres. He is a full professor at the History Department of the De La Salle University, Manila, and an associate director for drama and history at the Bienvenido N. Santos Creative Writing Center in the same university. He graduated with an AB journalism degree at the University of Santo Tomas and an MA and PhD, where he graduated with a magna cum laude in history at the UST Graduate School. He was a former researcher for the Intramuros administration before he entered the teaching profession at UST and DLSU Manila. He is a multi-awarded writer, winning the prestigious Carlos Palanca Memorial Award for Literature 5 times and the National Book Award for Travel Writing in 2006 for his book Ciudad Morada, A Walk Through Historic Intramuros. In 2017, he won his 2nd National Book Award for the Essays in English category for his book To the Person Sitting in Darkness and Other Footnotes of Our Past. He is the author and editor of 15 books on Philippine history and culture and a contributor of articles on history and culture to local magazines and university journals. He has also lectured in both local and international conferences on history and culture. Dear participants, let us all welcome our guest speaker, Professor Jose Victor Z. Torres. Sir, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Mia. Wait, I'm just trying to. Can someone release me from the control of the video? I cannot open. Wait lang.
Sure, sir. Take your time. No
My
worries.
video's off. Ayan.
There.
So, pasensya na po at yan yung mga technical natin ngayon sa mga online natin sa ating mga online webinars natin. Good morning to everyone, and I'm glad that everyone is here to at least know something about the heroes that we're commemorating today, the GomBurZa. Okay. Before anything else, I'd like to thank the National Parks Development Committee who have invited me here for their park conversation, and during the talk that we had before this entire thing, I was watching the video, and I really admired the effort that's being made today with regards to the development of our parks, because as you always know, parks are the breathing spaces of a city. And in order to appreciate a park, it should be clean, it should be people friendly, and so on and so forth. So I'm glad that I'm sharing with you, not with the NPDC, the knowledge of the places that we have today. Okay? The title of my lecture is in commemoration, of course, of the GomBurZa execution, of which today we are celebrating the 150th year. No? So I'll just set up my lecture. Okay, it's been 3 years since the pandemic, and I'm still very low tech in in determining the operating a computer. Okay, so the title of my lecture is "The Victims of an Evil I Tried to Fight: The Execution of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, Jacinto Zamora, known as GomBurZa, and of course the legacy of identity and resistance." The actual lecture or the paper that I wrote for this was long, but I just edited it to include the pertinent details of some things pertaining, of course, to the events that happened in the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 and the consequences that happened afterwards. The quotation that served as the title for this lecture is probably unfamiliar to you, okay? Because I paraphrased it from the Jose Rizal dedication to the three martyred priests, Fathers Mariano Gomez, Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, that he wrote on the dedication page of his second novel, the 𝘍𝘍𝑗𝐿. Here is the entire dedication. Okay? As you can see here, to the memory of the priest, Don Mariano Gomez, Don Jose Burgos, and Don Jacinto Zamora. Of course, we all know the later story, that the dates are wrong, that the ages of the priests are wrong. The church, by refusing to degrade you, has placed in doubt the crime imputed upon you. The government, by surrounding your trials with mystery and and shadows, causes the belief that there was some error committed in fatal moments, and all the Philippines, by worshiping your memory and calling you martyrs, in no sense recognizes your culpability. And so far, therefore, as your complicity in the Cavite Mutiny is not clearly proved, as you may or may not have been patriots, as you may or may not have cherished sentiments for justice and for liberty, I have the right to dedicate my work to you as victims of the evil which I undertake to combat. And while we await expectantly upon Spain someday to restore your good name and cease to be answerable to your debt, let this page serve as a tardy wreath of dried leaves over your unknown tombs, and let it be understood that everyone who without clear proofs attacks your memory stains his hand in your own blood. Of course, signed, J. Rizal. The execution of the three Filipino priests, all of whom were leaders of the secularization movement in the Philippines, was a turning point in Philippine history. For Rizal and other nationalists and many Filipino historians, the movement they began and their deaths became a starting point for nationalism and the symbols to colonial resistance that led to our road to independence. GomBurZa is one of the popular topics in Philippine history. Ask any student from the upper elementary school to college, and two words would immediately stand out to them when you talk about this period. The GomBurZa, Gomez, Burgos, Zamora, and of course the Garrote. Okay. I noticed a question before, by Professor Ambeto Campo, in a column that he wrote about the GomBurZa in 2015. he was asking, kanino ba galing, o sino ba nagpangalan ng GomBurZa? Yung sino nagpaikli ng GomBurZa, ganon. At first, at first it puzzled me, no, kasi apparently the people who shortened it, no, minadali nila ito. Then I realized pala that probably the earliest use of the word GomBurZa was in the Katipunan. Remember, the word GomBurZa was the password for the one of the levels of membership in this secret revolutionary movement. Now, even Rizal, as you can see in the dedication, did not use GomBurZa yet. No, and it seems that the first time GomBurZa was used was when it was the name was shortened into the first three syllables and used as a password in the Katipunan. Okay? Yeah, that's one trivia. We'll be talking about a lot of trivia later in this lecture. Okay. However, until today, as we commemorate the 150th year of the GomBurZa's death, a complete, or probably to quote from the Jesuit historian Father John Schumacher, a complete or a definite history of the GomBurZa tragedy and the events of 1872 have not been written. All we have, of course, of the textbook histories that we have, that was taken, of course, from the available sources about the GomBurZa. So here is the basic outline that we always get when we look at the history of the GomBurZa execution. Okay? One, there was a growing liberal movement composed of Filipinos that was first supported by a lenient Governor General, si Carlos Maria de la Torre, then suppressed by a brutal one, si Governor General Rafael Izquierdo. The secularization issue, the Filipinization of the parishes, that was eventually recognized as the first acts of nationalism by a select group of Filipinos. Then, of course, the military mutiny by disgruntled soldiers and workers in Fort San Felipe in Cavite in January of 1872. The question now that we ask here, that I'm going to explain later in the lecture, mutiny nga ba ang nangyari? And lastly, the three priests, Father Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, who were, according in the story, innocent of the crime of a rebellion or sedition, whatever they may call it, and were victims daw of friar, intrigue, and colonial oppression. The second question that I'm going to probably answer was that, were they actually innocent? A further study to this period has produced a number of confusing details through the years, especially with the circumstances that placed the three priests in the pantheon of heroes who resisted Spanish colonial rule. They were said to be either innocent or guilty of the crime of sedition, depending on the sources that were used. They were also said to be the victims of a nefarious friar plot. Diba? Sinisi pa yung mga praile that they wanted to get rid of the secular movement, the secularization movement. A plot details that also included a fake Father Burgos, walking around Cavite before the start of the mutiny. This lecture is an attempt to address the problems mentioned using new interpretations of documents that had been used by historians and researchers. They are still the same documents we have through the years, and so far, the only records that we have of the events of 1872. After 150 years, we still do not have the trial records of the three priests. And even if their fellow defendants, the liberals who were civilians and members of the liberal movement, these records could not be found in the Philippine National Archives or even the Spanish archives. Until today, how and why these records have gone missing is a mystery. There was a story by a Filipino historian who said that a Spanish Filipino historian, had already a copy of the trial records, though, but he didn't want to show them because he wanted it to be published. But apparently, I do not know if the story is true, because the story of that Spanish Filipino historian who had the documents was over like 30 years ago, and he already died. No, and even the descendants of this historian, I think, do not know. No, if their father really had those documents. But in spite of these shortcomings, I will hopefully provide a new outlook on the events of 1872 and firm up or correct any beliefs and understandings of the period. But first, before anything, let's look at the symbols and monuments that we have with regards to GomBurZa. Of course, the most handy evidence that we have, of course, of the memory of the GomBurZa is the 𝘍𝑗𝐿𝑝hilibusterismo, the novel of Rizal, and of course, the history of the Katipunan, where the word GomBurZa is mentioned as a password for a kawal or second-grade member of the movement. Later, the three priests were immortalized in paintings and sculptures, of which almost all of these representations showed them at their moments of their agonizing death by the garrote. Okay? Now, just to make it clear, what I am focusing here is the sculptures and the paintings where the three priests are presented as a tableau, not the individual statues that we have of the three priests. I am familiar with them. We have one in we have a monument to Burgos and a statue of Burgos in Vigan. We have, of course, the one in Pandacan showing Father Jacinto Zamora. Then, of course, the most latest one is the one in Bacoor, where Father Mariano Gomez served as the parish priest for over 40 years. No? What I'm going to focus here is the ones that are presented as a tableau. Okay. Probably the earliest one that we have of the GomBurZa monument was the one in Monumento in Caloocan, where at the back of the monument, so the front is Andres Bonifacio. At the back of the monument, you can see here the tableau of the three priests. No? These three figures of the priests are just three of 23 bronze figures that were placed on the monumento. So as you can see here, the one sitting in the garrote is Jose Burgos. Father Gomez is the one lying down on the left, and the one with his face still covered is Father Jacinto Zamora. Now, just probably another trivia to excite you a bit. It has always been placed in our history books. It's even placed in the GomBurZa monument at the Luneta, that the priests were executed by garrote, which according to the history text, the ones that you see on the monument, is death by strangulation. Okay? Unfortunately, that is a misconception. Probably because garrote has always been said that it pertains to strangling a person, or garrote using a rope, or using even a belt, so on and so forth, or a hanging noose. Okay. However, you would be surprised that the garrote is a very elaborate contraption used for execution for immediate and instant death. In short, the prisoner or the criminal is not allowed, hopefully, to suffer much with the death. So, how is it done? Apparently, the neck of the neck of the criminal is placed in an iron collar. Then, of course, he is tied to the seat. No, what is probably not seen, but this was later described by an American visitor in the Philippines when he witnessed a garrote execution, was that when you turn the big handle will immediately push a large screw that was in the back of the chair towards the neck of the condemned person. The screw will theoretically snap the spine and break the neck, okay? Causing, of course, instant death. But unfortunately, when I also read the account, written by James L. Stevens, the American visitor that I was telling you about, yung isa dun sa in-execute ay buhay pa, no? And he was the prisoner daw was moaning and crying out loud, no? Alternatively, because he was paralyzed already from the neck down. No, his spine was snapped. Fortunately for the prisoner, just lived only for a few hours. No, but according to Stevens, no, nakatakip na nga yung blanket para sa patay, pero they can still hear the prisoner moaning. The second monument to the GomBurZa is the GomBurZa National Monument, which you see today along P. Burgos Drive in Ermita, Manila, in front of the National Museum. This bronze statue features the three priests in their throes of death, with Father Burgos looking up at the rising sun. No? It was a creation of Filipino sculptor Solomon Saprit, who was commissioned by the GomBurZa Centennial Committee in 1972. The monument was first installed in Plaza Roma, in front of the Manila Cathedral, because Burgos was and Zamora were parish priests of the Manila Cathedral, and it was inaugurated by former President Marcos and First Lady Imelda in February 1973, during the centennial of the GomBurZa execution. No, it was made a year later kasi 1972, as we all know, medyo magulo pa yung panahon na yon. Okay? I'd like to thank pala the NHCP for this, especially Miss Dayan Galang, for showing me some of the photographs, no, of the GomBurZa inauguration at Plaza Roma in 1973. Okay? The statue, the GomBurZa monument, remained there for almost a decade, until in 1981 it was transferred to the present site. No, it was done by the Intramuros administration, because the law that created the Intramuros administration, no, sought to preserve Intramuros as it was once. Okay? And the GomBurZa monument is not exactly something that was there before. What was there before in Plaza Roma was the statue of Carlos IV. No, so what they did now was the team headed by IA consultant architect Ramon Faustman removed the GomBurZa monument there, no, and put back the Carlos IV statue. The GomBurZa monument now was placed in the site that you see now. It's surrounded by a nice, beautiful pool, and of course, there were a fountain. No, several fountains were built around it. Now, trivia again: the stones that were used to build the fountain around the GomBurZa monument in along Padre Fara were the stones that were once part of the Palacio del Gobernador of the Spanish Governor Generals in the 19th century. Okay? The ruins of the palacio were actually still standing there at that time, and so what they did, kasi magtatayo na ng bagong building, they had to remove the stone foundations, and in order to probably find a good use for the stone foundations, inilagay nila dito sa monumento ng GomBurZa. No, this monument was declared a national monument just last year. No, during the 149th year commemoration of the GomBurZa. Okay. The third major monument is actually a painting. It's this one. It's It's part of a mural entitled The Filipino Struggle Through History by national artist for painting Carlos Botong Francisco. This part of the mural showing the executed priest, triangular in form, used to be located above the main door of the office of the city mayor in the Manila City Hall, because the entire mural used to be located in the city mayor's office. So nasa ibabaw siya ng entrance sa double doors, no? However, when it was transferred to the National Museum for cleaning and eventual display, the GomBurZa figures were placed on the far end of the exhibit hall. No, you can see it today, above a wall panel showing the title and the history of the mural. There are two other monuments which are more closely related to the GomBurZa martyrdom. This is the first one. It was shown a while ago, no, in the video. The first is a squat obelisk located several meters away from the Rizal Monument. This monument marks the spot where the three priests were executed. There is no date on the markers placed on the obelisk except for the one of the Philippine Historical Committee, which dates the installation of the marker to 1953. Another plaque, which is behind the obelisk, showed that it was a project of the Knights of Columbus, the one in the middle, that states the execution place. The site, it also tells the story of the site, how the site was pinpointed. According to the plaque, the site was pinpointed by Don Gregorio San Jose Pagtalo and his wife, Don Gregorio Ramirez Pereira de San Jose, who were the parents of the Knights of Columbus, Grand Knight Ramon San Jose. His parents were actually the witnesses to the execution of the GomBurZa in 1872. The other monument is a cross that is found in Paco Park. No, I'd like to thank Professor Wensley Reyes for allowing me to use his photograph that he posted on Facebook. The other monument is a cross found in Paco Park, which marks the site where the three priests were buried after their execution. Unfortunately, even though that cross marks a site in Paco Park, I could not find any information how the site was pinpointed as the burial place. All I know is that before, and I'm not blaming anyone or any institution about this, was that before concerned citizens called notice to government officials, there used to be a public CR on that place. When I used to visit Paco Park in the early 90s, the place was marked by a white stone, a large stone that was painted white. In the text mentions that this was the burial place of the three Filipino priests, the GomBurZa. When I came back around 2 or 3 years later to the site, there was already a public toilet on it. And apparently, I don't know who was the officers concerned about it, but eventually mabuti naman, the toilet was demolished. Okay, and this, you can see now the monument of the cross that is placed there. Second part, for a definitive history. For this lecture, I will no longer discuss the textbook history of the events of 1872, the Cavite Mutiny, the death of the GomBurZas, the liberal movement. Instead, I will try to address the concern by Father Schumacher in writing a definitive history of the Cavite Mutiny after her research has brought to light a number of documents, and an examination of published sources showed that the mutiny and the execution of the three Filipino priests seems to be more than what actually happened during that time. Since the findings and the research is too long to discuss here, I will just concentrate only on a couple of points. Now, with regards to the Cavite Mutiny and Father Jose Burgos. From the facts narrated, we can get these conclusions. Now, this is Father Schumacher's conclusion. No, one, the revolt in Cavite was not a mutiny. It was part of a revolution. It was part of a planned separatist revolution. If you look carefully at the documents, Spanish documents about this event, no, it did not just include Fort San Felipe. It was supposed to include also a regiment of military officers in Manila. Okay? Kaya lang, as you'll see later, may nangyaring hindi tama. No? As I mentioned here, the revolution as a whole failed because of the defection of committed Filipino troops. May nakausap na. Handa na sila handa na sila mag-rebellion. Kaya lang, inunahan ni Rafael Izquierdo. The three priests executed had nothing to do with the revolt. That is Schumacher's conclusion. Nor did the priests, lawyers, and businessmen banished to Marialas have anything to do with it. Now, this is the conclusion that I have questioned with regards to Schumacher. The accounts that we have now stemmed from, a lot of it stemmed from Antonio Regidor, one of the liberals who was one of the victims of the 1872 revolt. Okay? I'm calling it a revolt now. No, so if you don't mind, I'm not going to call it a mutiny anymore. No, I'm calling it a revolt. No, although his accounts contains barely factual names and events, these are not reliable narratives. Okay, in short, tainted source. The removal of the exemption of arsenal workers from the from the tribute and compulsory labor was not the cause of the revolt. Kasi lumalabas sa textbook natin no? Even though they have contributed to the unrest. To follow Schumacher's first conclusion, the so-called Cavite mutiny should be called an uprising or revolution, with the mutiny just being the starting point of the revolt. In short, tama naman ang mutiny siya, but it was a starting point. Schumacher may have been right with his conclusions, especially with the fact that the mutiny was not a mutiny, but part of a failed separatist revolution instigated by not the priests, but by the liberal movement, along with the military composed of Filipino soldiers. How did this come about? How did this conclusion come about? Documents, among them, the letter of Governor General Rafael Izquierdo to the overseas minister in Spain, did not even mention that the Cavite incident was a motin or a mutiny. Even Rizal, no, just called it an algarada or a riot. No, bakit tumiit bigla yung storya? Kay Izquierdo, it wasn't just a mutiny. It was what he called an insurrection. Now, look at the atmosphere in the country at that time. We have to remember, no, that even before the start of the Cavite revolt, there was already the mutiny of the Tayabas Regiment, which involves Filipino soldiers. So, what does this mean now? Apparently, with the help, of course, of the liberal philosophies that were entering the island, we were starting to identify ourselves not merely as part of a colony or part of a slave, or what to use the word slaves, of the Spaniards. We were already trying to determine or trying to show our own identity. Although we could say that ang laki naman ang binabasa nyo about the Tayabas Regiment, no? But the fact that they were shouting about independence showed that it was probably, again, another attempt by the Tayabas Regiment for a separatist revolution. That this was 30 years ago, before the 1843, no? But of course, the Spaniards who have been remaining in the Philippines for quite a while were of course becoming wary na. Okay. Moreover, loyalty to Mother Spain has always been important to the Spaniards. Okay? And there were civilians, including the priests, who were questioning and contradicting colonial authority, and that it may have been alarming to them. especially the liberal movement, and especially, and most especially, the secularization movement of the Filipino priests. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐾𝐑𝐿 later reported to the overseas minister that he had already been receiving reports and rumors of a planned uprising involving the regiments of Manila and Cavite, and that he and his officers met with the soldiers to make them reiterate their loyalty to Spain and telling them the consequences of rebelling against the government. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐾𝐑𝐿 heard the report of the rumors January 19, 2 days before the start of the Cavite revolt. Their effort to stem the uprising proved to be effective. Well, 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐾𝐑𝐿 was working with the heads of the military. For when the revolt started, only a small group of native and Spanish soldiers revolted, and these men ended up fighting their comrades who were and still were professing loyalty to Mother Spain. Schumacher deduced that the efforts to reduce what was understood to be a major uprising into a mere mutiny by a few disgruntled officers and arsenal workers was made by two of the liberals who were implicated in the revolt. One was Antonio Maria Regidor, whose account of the incident of 1872 is used as a major source in Philippine history. Even the Los Sucesos de 1872 ni Artigas y Cuerva was based a lot on the work of Antonio Maria Regidor. And another was the account by Joaquin Pardo de Tavera, of which was used by his son Trinidad for his history work that was published in the early 20th century. Now, both men were among those who were charged with sedition in relation to the Cavite Mutiny, and they were sentenced to be exiled in the Marianas. These two men, especially Regidor, seems to have made an effort to retell the Cavite revolt into something small, in order to show that what was did to them when they were exiled was an injustice. It was a small incident involving the military, but bigla na lang nasama kami dyan. That was, of course, the theory, And for them, and as would later be adopted by many of our history historians. Excuse me. The Spaniards exaggerated the incident to implicate the important liberals and, of course, the secular priests. Now, let me go to the second point. Were the three Filipino priests guilty of their involvement in the failed revolt? Schumacher said that based on the evidence, it seemed that Burgos, Gomez, and Zamora didn't know anything of the revolt until the night of their arrest, thus showing that they were innocent of any knowledge of the uprising. Though this may be true, we cannot discount the fact that the three already had been under suspicion for their anti-Spanish activities even before. When the Royal Decree of 1849 came out, Mariano Gomez was already one of the signees of making a petition with Father Pedro Peláez, the early leader of the secularization movement, questioning the seizure of the Cavite parishes to give to the recollects. Ano nangyari? Mariano Gomez was confronted by the Archbishop of Manila, Jose Aranguren, because according to Aranguren, Gomez now was already making subversive, quote-unquote, activities. In short, as early as the 1840s, Gomez was already under suspicion. It was the secularization issue of 1849. So, for more than almost 30 years, he probably was just a young parish priest at that time, Gomez was already under suspicion. Bakit di siya ginagalaw? Well, Peláez died in 1863, and Peláez was a formidable force with the religious authorities, including the Spanish officials. Ang maganda kasi kay Peláez, he had contacts on all sides and was well known among the church officials. So Gomez was already under suspicion. Jacinto Zamora was arrested almost the night after the Cavite Mutiny. And according to the stories of our Philippine history, it was a case of mistaken identity. For me, that is BS. And probably a story invented by 𝘋𝐸𝐻𝐿 or probably Antonio Maria Regidor. According to the story by 𝘋𝐸𝐻𝐿, ang nakalagay daw doon sa arrest order was Jose Zamora. When this was pointed out daw by Jacinto Zamora na mali yung pangalan, binura daw ng arresting officer at nilagay Jacinto. It's a nice story. It could probably prove the innocence of Jacinto Zamora. Of course, there is the letter of the powder and bullets that sealed his fate. No, the problem with the story of Jose Zamora is that Jose Zamora never appeared anymore in the story of the Cavite Revolt. Kung kinahuli ang Jacinto, di mo nahuhulihin yung Jose. Di ba? No? And Jose Zamora doesn't even appear anymore. Many of the secular priests were arrested. Did Jose Zamora just disappear into thin air? O magaling siya magtago? But you have to remember, the effects of the Cavite Mutiny lasted for several months after the revolt. People were still getting arrested. Paano nakaligtas itong si Jose Zamora? Now, probably it was because of this reason. The existence of Jose Zamora was verified by Father Fidel Villaruel, who mentioned that there was a Jose Zamora who was the regimental chaplain of the Spanish military. In short, pari siya ng mga regiments ng military who probably could have been easily arrested. Kilala siya, pari siya ng military. But he wasn't. If it was an actual person, or it's probably a different Jose Zamora, we don't know. No? 𝘋𝐸𝐻𝐿's story, which was probably based on Regidor, seems a bit far-fetched, like his two comrades. Zamora was already under suspicion by Governor General Carlos Maria de la Torre because he was one of those listed by de la Torre to have their mail censored or confiscated by the Postmaster General. Kasama na siya sa listahan, si Jacinto Zamora. So paano siya maging innocent kung siya ay pinagsususpetsahan na? No? And being Burgos fellow priest in the Manila Cathedral, this meant he was not unaware of the activities of the secular priest, especially that of Jose Burgos. Now we come to our bida, Father Jose Burgos. As early as 1869, Burgos was already under suspicion when Governor General Carlos Maria de la Torre had written warnings for his successor on the political unreliability of the Filipino secular clergy and the necessity of opposing any anti-friar movement as being essentially anti-Spanish. This was the same Carlos Maria de la Torre that has a good name in Philippine history books as being cooperative with the secular clergy. Yet, documents were discovered in the archives, in the National Archives, showing that de la Torre was no different from any other Spanish official who were in the Philippines at that time. Recognized by his fellow religious as a successor to Father Pedro Peláez, following the latter's death in the 1863 earthquake, Burgos proved to be a more radical fighter for the rights of the secular clergy. In short, Burgos, what I believe is that he heavily politicized the secularization movement. In short, he radicalized it. Okay? By aligning the clergy with the liberal movement in the belief that they could together act, no, act better if the movement had a political color. A latter warning by Jesuit Superior Father Pedro Beltran to Burgos about mingling with the liberals went unheeded. No? Now, this is an unknown story that was later found out by Father Schumacher. Gomez broke away from Burgos because of this. He didn't want the seculars to be mingling with the liberals. Why? We don't know. But apparently, it seems that Gomez was finding his fellow Filipino priest a bit too radical. The question is, did the three priests know about the planned revolt? Schumacher was right that they may not have been directly involved, considering, no? They may not have been directly involved, but considering the closeness of Burgos with the liberals, Zamora with Burgos, and even a Spanish military evidence that a boat containing rifles was found in Gomez's house in Bacoor that was suspected to be, owned by Camerino, the government official who was planning to join the insurrection. It seems that the priests knew of the plan. They knew that something was going to happen. No? Why is it? Why am I telling you this? No? Why did I come to this conclusion? The secular movement has been going on for almost 30 to 40 years. And it was slowly building up into something when Burgos now started acting, tipong tamaling intay. Magplano na tayo ng anong gagawin natin. But I don't think Burgos was planning a revolt. No? He probably knew about it. Now, were they innocently falsely implicated by these two soldiers, Francisco Saldoa and Bonifacio Octavo? We don't know. Many historians would say, yes, they were falsely accused. Why these two priests only? Why these three only? There were like several priests involved and arrested. Mariano Sevilla, Cachorella, so on and so forth. Bakit itong tatlo lang? Were they active in the planning? Probably, we don't know. It's just pure guessing. No? But were they guilty? They were probably guilty in a sense that they knew something was going to happen. No? The only fault that they probably had was that they didn't know when it was going to happen. No? Because if they knew that something was going to happen, any inkling that they may be suspected by the Spaniards to be part of the conspiracy would have forced them to flee or leave the city or even leave the country. Because, but as you all know the story, they were caught in their homes. According to the story, Zamora was arrested with Burgos. Burgos was arrested visiting a friend. Gomez was in his house. Hardly the activity of people who were preparing to be part of the revolt. Nothing seems to be new about this lecture on GomBurZa, except for the analysis and interpretations of sources that had long been in the hands of researchers and historians. And it is these interpretations that I wish to convey to the participants and hopefully change our known history of the events of 1872. One, conclusion that the so-called Cavite Mutiny was not a mutiny, but a failed revolution that would have probably become widespread if the mutiny at Fort San Felipe became successful. And two, Father Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora were not that innocent of the sedition charges against them. The politicizing of the secularization movement placed them in the center of suspicion by the Spanish authorities. I believe that they may have known something about the revolt, but did not have enough knowledge about it to be alarmed or even act upon it. Because if they did, they would have fled or waited, for something to happen, if it was going to be successful or not. We have to keep in mind that we have always portrayed GomBurZa as innocent victims of Spanish colonial oppression. Maybe with the new interpretation, we can change that point of view. The three priests were not innocent victims, but with the ideas of identity and human dignity that brought about the first stirrings of nationalism in the Philippines of the 19th century, maybe and probably they may as well be considered our first heroes of the nationalist movement. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Salamat po, Prof. Torres. Napakaganda po ng inyong lecture ngayong umaga. Sobrang daming bagong impormasyon, tsaka bagong perspektiba tungkol sa kabayanihan ng GomBurZa. So, sana sa pamamagitan ng lektura ninyo, ang ating audience ay napayabong ang kanilang kaalaman tungkol sa GomBurZa, at yung kahalagahan ng pagbabalik tanaw sa mismo sa buo sa history natin, ganyan. Sa puntong ito po ay may oras po tayo para pakinggan ang mga komento o katanungan ng ating participants mula sa Zoom at sa Facebook Live. So sa ating participants, kung kayo ay nasa Zoom, pwede kayo magpadala ng tanong sa ating Q&A section, at sa mga nasa Facebook naman, maaari naman kayong mag-comment. Ayan. So Prof. Torres, sa simula pa lamang ng inyong lecture, marami nang nagtatanong dahil napaka-interesado nila sa inyong lecture. So, diretso ko na po sa unang nagtanong sa atin. Ang una po, ang tinanong po niya, kasi nabanggit po ninyo na parang wala tayong kopya ng mga paglilitis sa GomBurZa, at parang mahalagang impormasyon po yun. Gusto po nating malaman, meron bang kasalukuyang pagtatangka na makuha yung kopya nito? O meron bang ongoing initiatives po para mahanap ito? O meron bang update dito?
Ang initiative ng paghalap ng trial records has been going on for the past, actually, the past 150 years.
Tagal na.
Looking for those trial records. No? The first, ang story daw kasi was that the records were located at the 𝘋𝐶histoриco-militar in Spain, no? Kasi dito rin nakita yung trial records ni Jose Rizal. Okay? But the problem was, it seems that Wenceslao Retala, who first recorded the Rizal trial, did not even particularly find the trial records of the GomBurZa. There was another story in the 1970s now that during the time of Generalissimo Francisco Franco, the documents, some documents in the Historico-Militar, including the GomBurZa records, were transferred to a secret archive that was owned by handled by the men of Francisco Franco. Now, the idea probably can maybe true or not, no? But the question of initiatives, it has always been done. It has always been requested by our government, the national government. It has always been requested by private individuals. But surprisingly, all the response that they got, the Spanish archives, the Spanish officials, was that it seems that these documents were lost. No, either lost or I don't want to put any conspiracy theory in it. Marami na tayong masyadong conspiracy theory ngayon. But it probably was it probably got lost or it's probably buried somewhere in some archive.
Okay. Sana makita pa rin natin iyon sa ating kapanahunan Professor Torres, para malaman ang katotohanan dito Kasi po din nabanggit ninyo na parang may mga conflicting information at ang inyong ayon sa inyong pananaliksik ay talagang hindi sila inosente meron silang meron silang guilt in some ways. Kaugnay po nito kasi itong punta na lang sa sunod na tanong, i-relate ko na lang din. Kasi itong tatlong priest po na ito, ayon sa ating isang nagtanong, ay mula sa iba-ibang parish. So, mayroong taga Cavite, may taga Manila at Marikina. Correct nyo na lang po kami kung hindi.
Tama yun, no?
Okay. So, una sa lahat, magkakaiba po sila ng parish, pero lagi silang ina-identify as a group. So, una po, related po ba sila? Tapos, pangalawa, kasi parang may mga parang conflict din sa kanila, sa kanilang tatlo gusto ko lang din malaman, paanong nangyari na, ayun nga po, naging magkakaiba yung sinulat ni Schumacher, tapos sa lumalabas talaga na nangyari. Ayun po.
Well, in the first place, kaya sila pang taga-ibang parishes pero nagsama, they are still under one church, which is the Archbishop, which is under the Archdiocese of Manila. No, malaki kasi sakop natin ang Archdiocese. No, so even though they come from different parishes, they were the secular movement was managed, of course, by Father 𝘱𝘱𝑗𝑒𝑙𝐻, who was working, of course, with the for what I remember, because I didn't go much into 𝘱𝘱𝑗𝑒𝑙𝐻, who was working with the officials of the Archdiocese, of the Archbishopric pala, Archbishopric of Manila. No? So, ayun, kaya nagsasama-sama pa rin sila. They were basically also in contact with each other. No? I forgot, sorry, what was the second question?
Kung paano pong nangyari na nag-iba yung isinulat ni Schumacher, na ayun nga po, na inosente sila, kumpara sa lumalabas na ayon sa inyong pananaliksik, bakit kaya isinulat na ganoon?
Yeah, kailangan naman natin tanggapin that there is no one final word in history. No, that and I think that's what makes history exciting. Kaya yung mga gusto mag-history diyan, yan lang nagpapa-excite sa atin sa history. No, wag na kayo maniwala sa Talyano gold. Ibang usapan na yan. But tawag dito, the excitement of history is that we tend to analyze and we look at more facts. No, when I reread the research work done by Father Schumacher, I could never understand why did he miss out on some of the details that the priests were engaged already in a radicalized secular movement. He probably wrote it in one of his I like one of his Schumacher's book, The Revolutionary Clergy. Because here he points out the changes that is being done now by the clergy. Okay? That is my interpretation, of that they were indeed guilty, and that we should change our ideas of what the mutiny was more than a mutiny. This was explained by Father Schumacher.
Okay.
So ganun din, hindi kasi isang palahon at isang forma at isang kalagayan nangyayari ang ating kasaysayan. Pabago-bago ito sa pagpunta rin ng panahon.
Okay. Sige po, Prof. Si Father Schumacher ay isang pari po, tama po ba?
Yes, he's a Jesuit historian. He teaches Philippine church history in the Ateneo. Unfortunately, Father Schumacher, I think, died 2 years ago.
Okay, very recent.
Ateneo.
Okay, so i-relate ko lang po kasi he's also part of the church. May nagtanong din po kasi na parang since ang GomBurZa ay mga pari din po, ano po ba, pinag-uusapan pa rin kaya sila ng simbahang Katoliko ngayon? At meron bang attempt to, I don't know, like, sabi kasi dito ay recognize, pero kung hindi man recognize yung accomplishments nila, parang, alam mo, to bring them into light here in the Philippines, meron po bang parang ganong usapan?
Surprisingly, I think many of us are already seeing the results of what they did throughout our history, because halos lahat ng simbahan natin, pari ang Pilipinong pare. it was never like that before until the 1950s and the 1960s. Patuloy ang paglaban ng Filipinization of parishes because almost all of the religious orders here in the Philippines, right after World War II, were still foreigners. No, the Jesuits had their Americans. The UST was still very much Spanish until 1973, when it was finally turned over to the Filipino Dominicans. This was a result, no? If you want to place it in a historical context, this was a result of the efforts that was made by the secular priest that was led by the GomBurZa priests, no? Tinuloy lang natin sa kasaysayan na suppress lang ng konti kasi dahil nga nangyari dito sa Cavite Revolt, but it eventually was continued after the war when people like Father Hilario Lim, tapos sila Father Benito Vargas of the Dominicans realized that, teka, nasa Pilipinas tayo tapos ang simbahan natin pali foreigner pa rin. So it was a symbol of nationalism that they continued and that was eventually raised up during the secularization period.
Ang ganda nung ano nila, no? Nasimulan po nila.
Yeah.
Oo. Ngayon po, dahil meron silang ganong klaseng influence, ano po kaya yung nangyari? May tanong po kasi, ano kaya ang nangyari naman dun sa ibang mga pari na konektado dun sa Cavite Mutiny? Alam mo, nabanggit nyo naman po na hindi parang hindi na implicate yung iba. Pero yun po, parang meron kayang mga na-execute din o may mga na-banish din kaya. May mga ganun bang naisulat?
Maraming na-banish na pare, especially those who were pinpointed to be involved, no? And were heavily active in the Cavite, in the secularizations. Father Mariano Sevilla, who was exiled, eventually became part of the Philippine Revolution. No, he was one of the I'm not sure of the other list of names. Ano? Kasi ito yung naging problema natin sa kasaysayan ng Cavite Mutiny. Kailangan talaga halapin mo yung mga dokumento eh. No? But many of those who were implicated, especially in the what happened with the Cavite Revolt, were Filipino priests who later became active in the Philippine Revolution and later became active in the changes that was going to happen to the Philippine Catholic Church during the American period. So ano pa rin sila talaga? They became active. Of course, many of them were remained in exile, no? But many of them would eventually live abroad, especially yung mga mayayaman na liberals. But many of the priests would eventually would come back. So when conditions were already stable.
Okay po. Sige po. Punta po tayo sa susunod na tanong. May nagtatanong naman, tingin niyo po ba na ang mga Spanish na praile ay yung mga against secularization noon had something to do with the downfall of Father Burgo? So ito po itanong ni mula sa Zoom, Jose Mario Alas.
Yeah. Ano tawag dito? They may have not exactly implicated Burgos, no? But they have I did not find any direct evidence na may paring praile nagtuturo. Ito si Burgos, may kasalanan niyan everything, no? But they were especially wary. No? I mean the Catholic Church under the Spanish friars were pretty much very wary about the secularization. No? Because first and foremost, it meant the loss of their control of the parishes, and again, it also meant the loss of their income. Because many of the religious orders relied on incomes coming from the parishes, and when it was beginning to be turned over to the Filipino priests, wala sila ng income. Now, were they responsible for the downfall of Burgos? They probably were, but not in a sense, not openly. Ang mahirap kasi, if they were secretly behind these things, probably they were behind the downfall of Burgos. Not only of Burgos, but even Zamora. no, not even Zamora, Gomez. Gomez was a formidable enemy. Because he didn't want to let go of the Cavite parishes. Pinaglaban niya yun eh.
Mm.
No? So it wasn't just Burgos. Probably, if I want to address the question, all of them. No? The friars, no, made probably some moves that led to their downfall. But what moves they were, history probably in the future will reveal it.
Mm. Okay, sana sa future malaman po natin 'yan. Oo. Okay. Meron pong tanong dito naman na may base ba or siguro may basehan ba sa documentary evidence na si Padre Gomez ay implicated dahil sa paglalaro ng pangginggi. Ayan. Yung nabanggit ba niya tungkol sa paputok ay code word sa pagsiklab ng Cavite Revolt?
That was Father Zamora. That was Father Jacinto Zamora. No,
Okay.
there was evidence that Zamora was a gambler, and probably that letter, that short note was true. No, and to put it more, to put probably a bit mildly, minalas talaga si Zamora dumating yung letter na yun. No, but the fact that he was arrested at the same night, no, that the same night the Cavite Mutiny, the Cavite Revolt was suppressed, no? Kasi pumutok ang Cavite Revolt 21 eh. No? Tapos January 21. Tapos ilaresto si Gomez kabilang 21. Ilaresto si Burgos kabilang 22. That the moment when the Cavite Revolt was suppressed by the Spanish military, immediately 𝘋𝐸𝐪𝐷 ordered the arrest of Burgos. Zamora was probably just outside muna, but there wasn't yet a direct order. But I do not believe the story na binura lang yung pangalan niya tapos inilagay yun. No? Probably the instruction also included Zamora, probably, no? Because 𝘋𝐸𝐸𝐷 already had a list of the secular priests who were under suspicion. No? Now, about the story of the powder and the bullets, minalas ni Zamora kasi dumoble ebidensya sa kanya. No, yung suspicion suddenly became for this Spanish, may definite evidence.
Kaya pala. Okay. Okay. So, minalas talaga pala siya. Okay po. Sige po. Meron lang po nagtatanong, may gusto lang ding makaalam. Ano po ba yung bakit nga ba nagkaroon ng secularization? Ano yung objective nila dun sa secularization?
Okay, yeah. Ito yung isa sa bahaging tinanggal ko sa aking lecture kasi hahaba yung story, But I'll tell you the point, no? The objective of the church, of the Catholic Church in the Philippines, nung unang sila dumating dito sa Pilipinas, was to evangelize, no? To make the colonies Catholic and everything, no? But naging silbi ngayon na secularization? Kasi matapos mag-evangelize ang mga praile misyonaryo, no? At magtayo ng mga parish, they were missionaries. So in short, they would travel from place to place to put up missions, then parishes. They were not supposed to stay in one place lang. Trabaho nila mag-evangelize eh. Now, anong ginawa nila? Kaya nagkaroon ng mga secular na pari. Kasi this was like the stage 2 of the evangelization effort. That after the parish was put up, no, the friar missionary, to put it in a simple sense, no, the friar missionary would move to another place and put up another mission to be made into another parish. Ngayon, sino may iwan dito sa itilayong parish? Yung mga tinuturuan ngayon sa mga seminaryo ng mga Pilipino. Because even if you look at the statistics of the friar missionaries during the Spanish era, konti lang talaga sila. So sino marami? Di magturo tayo ng mga let us teach the natives now, in this case the Filipinos, to become priests. No, they have to train them properly. It's one of the reasons tinayo ang UST, yung Colegio de Santo Tomas. It was because for the training of the for the training of the future priests. No? Ang naging problema la secularization was this. Schumacher, in his one of his research works, said na nagkaroon ng crisis dahil may mga parishes, especially when the Jesuits were expelled from the Philippines, immediately pinalit sila with priests who were not, with Filipino priests who were not fully trained yet. Yeah, there was a sudden decline of the quality daw. That was according to this, the story. There was a sudden decline of the quality of the Filipino priests servicing in the parishes. Another reason probably was that many of the friar missionaries didn't want to leave anymore. No? Yung attitude na, ako lang palaki nito eh. Bakit pamimigay ko to sa mga Pilipino, di ba? And so what began was supposedly a good idea for evangelization, self-destructed. Because it worked initially eh. Kasi ang daming na turnover eh sa mga Pilipino. But because of the quality daw, according to the Spaniards, the quality, according to the Filipinos, the greediness of the friars, nagkagulo-gulo na sila talaga. Kaya nagkaroon ng, and it caused the Filipino priests now to band together and put up this movement to fight for their rights for the parishes. Yeah, that was actually one of the sections I removed from my lecture. As I said kanina, may tinanggal ako kasi hahaba yung lecture. Okay?
Interesting din yun, Prof.
Yeah.
Kung sakali ba, Prof, sa mga interesado, meron ba kaming parang pwedeng basahin tungkol dyan na sinulat ninyo, ganyan? Saan ba namin pwedeng makita yan?
May yung article ni Father Schumacher that's accessible. It's online, no? It's with the Philippine Studies. And of course, the website of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, where they talked about the secularization.
Mm-hmm.
No? The secularization of the parishes.
Okay.
What made it, I think, a very visible movement for our nationalism is it because I don't think they were aware of it at that time, but these priests were fighting for the dignity of becoming Filipinos.
Mm-hmm.
They had the dignity of studying. They had the dignity of expertise. They had the dignity of learning to become priests to take care of parishes of their own country. And that was the dignity that they felt that was removed from them. Kaya laging nagkaroon ng movement eh. And remember, dignity is always part of our nationalism because kung wala kang pinaglalaban na dignidad, wala mangyayari sa'yo. And I think that's for me, that was the acceptance of that dignity and of course of being Filipino, that created and brought the recognition that the secularization movement was our first nationalist movement.
Ang ganda po. Ang ganda din ng pagpasok ng dignidad. Prof, ang dami pong tanong, sobrang interesado sila. Pero limited po kasi ang time. Pero may last 2 questions na lang po ako itatanong. Ang related din po dun sa yung secularization as the first national movement. So ano po ba yung kaugnayan ng impluwensya talaga ng GomBurZa kina Rizal, Bonifacio, tsaka ng iba pang mga bayani? Ayan. So paano ba sila na-inspire? Paano sila na-impluwensyahan?
I think sa part ni Rizal, it has always been a question. There was a question: did Rizal witness, the execution? No, we have no evidence that, or any probably or direct evidence that Rizal may have witnessed the GomBurZa execution. What is known probably is that Pasialo may have witnessed it, his brother. No, and remember, Pasialo had a very heavy influence on Jose Rizal. No, if you read carefully the dedication of Rizal, no, to the GomBurZa, he wasn't exactly saying that they were innocent. He was saying that they were probably innocent, no, that they were victims of Spanish oppression. However, he said that he adopted the same words of Archbishop Meliton Martinez, who was requested to degrade the three priests by removing their priestly habits ordered by Izquierdo. Ang sinabi ni Archbishop Meliton Martinez was that bago ko gawin yung gusto nyo gawin, to degrade the three priests, pakita mo na ng records. He wanted to read the records of the trial because he wanted to show that what he was doing was right. So in short, he didn't exactly say that the priests were innocent. What he said was he wanted to see the evidence if the trial was right, which is two different things. Now, Bonifacio, on the other hand, looking at it with a bigger picture, Bonifacio and Rizal may have been influenced, of course, by not only the priests, but of course the liberal movement behind it. But remember, it was only after it was only after that that it was put in a better context, that the three priests were part of that struggle for nationalism and eventually independence.
Okay. So doon po pala talaga nagsimula At parang din parang applicable din siya parang syempre gusto nating malaman kung gaano ba makatarungan ang mga proseso so talaga titingnan gusto na makita yung mga ebidensya.
Yeah, and the influence of the three priests even extended until as I said a while ago, in the future, when the Filipinization of the parishes, the Filipinization of the religious orders, when the Filipinization of the religious orders eventually began in the 1950s, these three priests became the symbols of that Filipinization.
Okay. So, talagang sila, gandang simbolo talaga din nila sa ating nationalism. For last question na lang po ano po kaya yung kahalagahan ng GomBurZa sa panahon ngayon? Parang pang-wrap up na lang po ito at paano po kaya ito nag-a-apply or naging relevant paano naging relevant yung nangyari sa kanila sa mga nangyayari ngayon sa kasalukuyan sa bansa?
Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, ang isang pinaglaban parati ng GomBurZa ay yung pagiging pagka-Pilipino at yung dignidad ng pagiging pagka-Pilipino. Dahil kung wala kang dignidad, kahit ano sabihin mo tungkol sa nationalismo, hindi mo kaya ipaglaban ng nationalismo kung hindi mo ito isasama bilang paglalaban ng iyong dignidad bilang mga Pilipino. And until today, we are still doing that. We are still fighting for our dignity of beginning to sound like a politician, but we're fighting for the dignity of our of being Filipino in the face of the continuous globalization that is happening. So we are starting. We have to admit that we are starting to lose our identity. Starting lang. I'm not saying we lost. We're starting to lose our identity. And unless we take care of it, and unless we look carefully at it, we are going to lose our dignity as Filipinos.
Oo. Ang ganda. Sige. So talaga, sana ay sa mga manonood natin, lumakas pa ang ating sense of identity bilang mga Filipino. Napakaganda po, Prof. Torres. Ang dami-dami pa po nating tanong at pasensya natin hindi lahat ay maitatanong natin. Pero bago natin tapusin ang Q&A section, Prof. Torres, meron bang siguro paraan para siguro kung yung mga may tanong sa inyo, pwede silang paano kaya lang kayo ma-reach?
Although I seldom accept friends ngayon sa Facebook kasi There was one time I accepted so many first at troll ako.
Okay.
Troll ako bigla. Siguro I will check the NPDC Facebook page.
Okay.
And probably if there are any questions that are answering, or some actually I can see some of the questions here are asking for sources about it. I'll probably coordinate with the NPDC to at least access the page of this park conversation and try to answer the questions.
Sige po. Okay po, Prof. Sige. So, para sa mga manonood, huwag kayong malungkot kung hindi nasagot ang inyong mga tanong. At nandito naman ang NPDC para makipag-ugnayan sa ating speaker ngayong umaga. At muli, Prof. Torres, maraming salamat po sa pagtanong sa mga sobrang appreciate namin ang inyong saliksik at ang inyong lecture ngayong umaga. At siguro para formal nating isara yung Q&A section talaga meron ba kayong concluding statements pa, mga gusto niyo pang sabihin para sa ating participants?
Nagiging ang isa sa mga panganib natin ngayong panahon ay yung paglalaro ng ating kasaysayan. Na ang paglalaro na siyang nagiging biktima tayo ng kasinungalingang nangyayari. No? Mag-aral tayo ng ating kasaysayan. Alamin natin ang ating tamang kasaysayan. Huwag po tayo umasa sa TikTok at YouTube para sa ating kasaysayan. Makinig po sa ating mga guro, sa ating mga profesor, tungkol sa pag-aaral ng ating kasaysayan. Maraming website sa internet na nagtuturo ng tamang kasaysayan. Ito lang po ang kailangan po nating alamin para matuto at maging bahagi ng ating buhay ang ating kasaysayan. Maglakad lang kayo sa luneta. Dami-daming kasaysayan dyan sa paligid. Kailangan nyo lang matuto talaga kung ano ang mga ito.
Ang ganda. Tama, ako po, sobrang totoo yan. Kailangan nating magbalik tanaw talaga sa kasaysayan at matuto mula ito. Napakaganda. So, muli po, mula sa lahat ng bumubuo ng NPDC, taos puso po kaming nagpapasalamat sa pagbabahagi ng inyong kaalaman tungkol sa GomBurZa at sa mahalagang kontribusyon nila sa ating kasaysayan at pagkabansa. At para naman sa ating participants, sana po ay nahikayat tayong patuloy na pag-aralan at saliksikin ang nakaraan na puno ng mayayamang ideya at kahalagahan. Ayan. So ngayon naman po sa puntong ito ay meron po tayong igagawad na Certificate of Appreciation para sa ating guest speaker. So ito po ang ating nasa screen. So ang NPDC pati na ang DOT ay nag-award nitong Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Jose Victor Z. Torres for sharing his valuable insights and knowledge on the webinar, Victims of an Evil I Try to Fight, the Execution of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, or GomBurZa, and their legacy of identity and resistance, given the 17th of February 2022 via Zoom video conference. So ito po ay pinirmahan ng ating Executive Director na si Cecilia Lorenzana Romero. Ayan. So muli, maraming salamat po.
Salamat
Torres.
sa lahat.
Salamat po talaga at sa ating participants sa parehong Zoom at Facebook platform. Sana ay pare-pareho at ulit tayong natuto at nag-enjoy sa ating Park Conversations episode ngayong umaga. Magkita-kita ulit tayo sa susunod na Park Conversations. Ako si Mia Lauengco. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Thank you po.
Para makakuha ng digital certificate, pakisagutan po ang maikling survey na matatagpuan sa Zoom chat box at Facebook live comment section. Makatutulong ito upang mapagbuti pa namin sa NPDC ang kalidad ng aming mga programa at proyekto. Paki-follow kami sa aming social media accounts upang maging updated sa iba pang makabuluhang programa at proyekto. Para sa Facebook, paki-like ang aming Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Para sa Instagram, paki-follow ang npdc.ph. Para sa Twitter, npdc_ph. At para sa YouTube, mag-subscribe sa National Parks Development Committee. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media.
Apat na siglo at kalahati na po ang nakalilipas nang dumating ang mga Espanyol dito sa kaharian ng Maynila. Pinaalis si 𝘪𝑚 sa kanilang kaharian at dinala po sila dito sa lugar na ito. At ito pong lugar na ito ay mula noon tinawag na kanilang bagong bayan. Nakilala ito bilang bagong bayan. Mga kaibigan, ito pong lugar na Bagong Bayan ay paalala ng ating pighati sa ilalim ng kolonyalismo. Ito pong lugar na ito ay ginawang parke, kinlir, upang maprotektahan ang kanilang lungsod, ang Intramuros, na pinadiran nila para madaling makita kung may mga lumulusog na mga Pilipino. Ang parking ito, mga kaibigan, mula noon ay naging pasyalan o dito ginagawa yung mga tinatawag na paseo ng mga mayayaman, kung saan sila po ay umiikot dito sa kanilang karwahe. Pero, hindi lamang po pagpapaseo o pamamasyal ang kanilang libangan dito. Ginawa din po libangan, paminsan-minsan, ang pagtunghay ng mga pagbitay. Executions. Dito po, sa lugar na ito, binaril, ginarote, o binitay ang iba't ibang mga nagkasala sa Espanya. Isa po sa mga naging pagbitay na naganap dito sa Bagong Bayan, Luneta, ay ang nangyari sa mga paring Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, at Jacinto Zamora. Sila po ay mga inosenteng lumaban lamang para sa pagkakapantay-pantay ng kapayapaan dito sa Pilipinas. Sila po ay sinakdal sa isang rebelyong wala silang kinalaman. Ang naganap po na marahas na pagbitay sa tatlong inosenteng pare ay gumimbal sa maraming Pilipino. At ang 1872, ang mga kaganapan nito ang magiging inspirasyon ng maraming Pilipino upang humingi ng pagbabago at paglaon, revolusyon laban sa kolonyalismo. Sa tatlong paring ito, inalay ni Jose Rizal ang kanyang ikalawang nobelang El Filibusterismo. Mga kaibigan, ang mga kaganapan sa lugar na ito ang sumibol sa kamalayang makabayan at pagbubuo ng nasyon ng ating mga bayani.